last spring. I I got 2 AAs, one in math, one in physics, and I'm trying to complete my aerospace engineering degree over at Cal Poly Pomona. Yeah, I can. That's what I was just gonna say. We will exchange information. I can help you out. I I was working, I think, for about a little over a year as a math tutor for the veterans on campus. So, and then before there, I worked in admission and records. So I've been here for a little while.
By the way, I don't think we mentioned like what we do here at Glendale Community College.
We might have forgot.
Who are these two random elected African Americans representing the entire community? So I am a counselor here, academic counselor here in the general counseling department here at Glendale.
And I am a transfer counselor. Yes.
Okay, so now we got that out of the way, we're going to ask the students a couple of questions. So, please, describe your experience here at Glendale Community College.
I just want to say that I had an extremely positive experience here. And I was talking to them about this earlier. The school or the district that I came from was very challenging for me. There was, I've had a lot of really nice people. I had a lot of respectful people and, a lot of individuals that I still love, but there was a lot of racism there. I had racism coming from my elementary school, from my junior high, my high school. The community sometimes would be pretty harsh. So coming here to Glendale, I sort of expected that because, I know it's a majority Armenian campus, but I didn't have that much experience with Armenians, and I found it to be the complete opposite. I've had such a blast here, and people have treated me with so much respect. So I have nothing but positive things to say about GCC.
Me personally, when I first started GCC, it was a very new experience. I had no idea what kind of campus this were and who the demographics were. I just started going to Glendale Community College. It was close to my house. As I started going into a semester, a counselor came out to me and she told me about the Black Scholars Program that we have at Glendale Community College. It'll help you get involved and meet some people here. Of course, I just accepted because I was like, okay, this is a fun way to get, be intuitive in the campus. That ended up being a gateway into me exploring other options on campus. And like I said, I joined student government, and I found a broader family coming from the majority demographic of the Armenian community more than anybody, people. And so this campus has been a huge impact on me personally, and it's been nothing but positive opportunities here and positive interactions I've come across.
So when I started Glendale Community College, I am what is considered a non-traditional student, meaning I didn't just graduate high school and then come to college. I had already started a family. I had actually by any means. When they asked me to speak about my experience at Glendale, or anytime I'm asked to speak as a student right now during this season in my life, I'm like, I'm a student? Am I a student? Wait a minute, how am I still a student? And the amazing part about that is that we are always students, and we never stop learning until God calls us home. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention as far as being a student at Glendale Community College with my experience here is that I entered Glendale during a very vulnerable time in my life, meaning I was not prone to want to tell others that I was a student or too proudful to say that I'm in college or going back to school. And the first word that came to my mind when I think about Glendale Community College is kindness. And it's something that seems so simple and so elementary, and the word kindness is something that you teach as far as what to build in your kids when they're in elementary school. But it's such a fundamental trait to being a good person that I valued it so much being here because it was what I needed and what I was looking for when I entered the campus. And so everyone, I don't say everyone's such a broad term, but most of the people that I met and have worked with here at Glendale Community College have genuinely been kind. From the counselors to the instructors to the people working in the cafeteria, literally have genuinely been kind. And I don't want to go too much into not only my personal life, but the depths of being a part of a disappropriated community or race. But when you are facing a issue or trial or tribulation that is difficult, you're looking for kindness. You're looking for people who genuinely care. And so there is a quote, it's a quote by Mother Teresa, who, when she talks about poverty, and she's like, most people think that poverty has to do with being poor or not having a home or being naked, but poverty also has to do with people who are unloved and uncared for and overlooked. And that is something that I really genuinely feel like Glendale Community College has a spirit of, is people who care. And I think that that's the most important thing in life, not just at a 2-year college where you're transitioning or whatever you're doing, whether you're getting a certificate, whether you're transferring, whether you're just coming back to school to learn a new skill, to learn a foreign language. Being able to surround yourself with people who genuinely care about your well-being will cause you to succeed in general in whatever you do. And so I am so grateful, genuinely, and humbled to be a student at Glendale Community College because that has been my personal experience.
Okay, first of all, I was supposed to be out there. I just found out I'm up here, so bear with me. Okay, well, my journey started in the 60s. Like, you know, I was born in South Central Los Angeles, and, you know, growing up, when you graduated from high school, that was it. Everybody said you made it. They wasn't pushing us to go to college. I don't even know if I heard the word college back in the day. You know, graduated from high school, okay, good, grad night. We thought we was done with school. So I guess I was done with school. And I, like she said, I started a family and everything, but my journey continued. I went to Mission College. I studied there. I did my general educations. I did child development. I had my associate teacher's permit, but I didn't walk the stage because as before, over there, I didn't pass math. So that's what started me here. I left there to, you know, they give you 3 tries. After my second try, I said, maybe I'll try a new district, a new college, a new experience. And plus it wasn't diversified enough for me. It was, I like people, all people. You know, I saw maybe a handful of African Americans, but at the college, it didn't bother me that I was the only black in my class, the oldest person in my class. My thing was, I'm doing my degree for me, not for who's around me, to say that I did it, you know, I accomplished something. But so I came over here to take math, but I had to start over with the general education classes, but thank God I succeeded in those. And I just, like I said, just have the math, but with all the help from the black scholars, from everybody that I met here, from the advice, and to say that you can do it, you can keep going. I'm studying giving everybody else advice. You could do it, you can keep going. But in my head, I was like, I better do it. I need to keep going, because sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to go to school no more, because it's disappointing when, why I can't get it, you know. But I feel like I'm in elementary, because, you know, at the high school, I've been out of school like 30 years, and like just coming back, this stuff the kids know already, or the children or the college students know already. I'm listening like this sounds foreign to me, but I know back then I knew it, but now I don't. But I still sit in the front so I can learn, because to tell you the truth, some of these students are disrespectful. On their phone, talking, you can't hear in the back. So I need to be in the front with my glasses so I can see, so I can hear. But other than that, so I don't lose my focus or lose my temper, tell somebody to shut up. But other than that, I'm just, the ambiance here feels like home. Like everybody I've met, I never had a negative vibe about, maybe one or two, but I keep that to myself. Me and that person, we're gonna fix that. But just getting tutoring, getting help, not just because they say black scholars, just go because African American, but every office I visited has helped me to either further my education or want to continue to further my education. And I'm just, when I do graduate from here and walk this stage, I could take my math over there and walk that stage. So that's what I'm trying to do, just meet more people, meet more tutors, and can just say, that I graduate from college. I'm just not like them though. I'm 51. I'll be 52 next month. After this, I need to go to work. I need to help some older people. That's what I love, older people. The young people can fend for yourself. Y'all can cook for yourself, and y'all can read your own books. Them the people that need me, and that's it. That's all I'm striving for, is to graduate and go work in somebody's old folks' home or elderly care home, maybe eventually own that elderly care home. So when my family get older, they can come to where I work at, where I own, and I can take care of them. But as far as that, that's my struggle. Thank you.
So I have the next question. Let's see. Do you feel your experience as an African American or Black individual impacts your experience as a student at Glendale Community College? So I can read it one more time. Do you feel your experience as an African American or Black individual impacts your experience as a student at Glendale Community College?
So I think as an African American in general, it affects my experiences for whatever I do, whether I was here at Glendale or if I was at any other school. Can you repeat the question? I was like, wait, I had it.
Do you feel your experience as an African American or Black individual impacts your experience as a student at Glendale Community College?
Okay, right, yeah. So wherever I go, I think, like I was saying, as an African American, what I encounter or what I face is affected. But specifically here at Glendale, like I was saying earlier, I don't think that I've experienced anything particular based on my race so far.
Me personally, that question brought me back to the book I was reading. I'm reading Michelle Obama's Becoming. And she talks about her college experience, that she was the only one minority student in her classrooms going to an Ivy League school. And she talked about how she had to become the example and how all the other Black students became the example. And I look at myself and I say, okay, the majors I'm going into is STEM, I see computer science, we see physics, but why is there a lack thereof of students like, us going to those higher degrees? What's the problem there? And I feel like it's the example that we see. As I walk around campus, I don't get to see the privilege of students, cooperating together in a way which want to bring people up instead of, just playing the music or doing the sports. It's the traditional, and not enough students are trying to break out and to be something different. And I feel that's what we need to be more supportive of and try to implement in our school systems to get more African American students of dreaming of something bigger and broader. Just me personally. I don't think that answers the question, but that's what I feel like I'm trying to do at Glendale Community College. At least I'm just trying to be the example.
Next question.
Okay.
Well, like she said, I don't know if it had an impact Wait, say it again. Read the question again for me too.
No problem. Do you feel your experience as an African American or Black individual impacts your experience as a student at Glendale Community College?
But for me, no, it didn't, because I came here. I already know I'm African American, but I came here as a person, as a student. I'm coming here as a Black person, a Black student. So I came here to learn, and not, I came here and to learn, to not because of what color I was or whatever. I didn't think I was going to have a hard time. It's only what you make it. You have a hard time if you put yourself in a bubble and say, I'm not going to be over here because there's no Black people over there. I'll bust out the bubble. I'll say, I'm going over here because there ain't no Black people over here. I know my race, my culture. I wanted to know of all cultures, and I wanted to learn from all cultures. So it didn't impact me. I was just happy, just to be coming to college,
I would say that being African American definitely did impact my, education here. And it's only because I was raised a specific way. I think that sometimes, I do have attitude. I was raised, if I don't like something or if somebody is, treating me a certain way, to speak up about it. And I feel like that's not really a culture that's kind of in the STEM program. Like if professors sometimes, talk down to you or disrespect you, I think a lot of people just kind of take it and shut up. But I'm not like that. Like, I won't cuss anybody out or anything, but if somebody says something that is insulting to me, like, I speak up about it. And I've, kind of gotten, into it sometimes with a couple of my professors. But at the end of the day, there's still mutual respect that we have for each other. But I feel like, I don't know if it's just a Black thing or maybe it's my upbringing or my age, but other than that, not really, not too much.
So the next question is, what would your advice be for future African American students coming to Glendale Community College?
Well, my advice to them is come to school, do what you're supposed to do, ask as many questions as you need to. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't think that you will be overlooked if they don't get to you, but eventually move on to the next available counselor or teacher or person. But continue to ask your questions until you feel that you're satisfied with the answer, and just come to school, get your education, and it's not too late. It's no too young or too old. Just come to school.
And then I would just piggyback on that as far as asking questions. Seek resources. People that work at Glendale are very helpful, so don't be intimidated to ask. And if that person does not know, kindly thank them for their time and ask someone else. And if there's a resource that's not available that you would like to see at Glendale, try creating some type of organization like you guys have to get the resources here so that your experience at Glendale can be the most positive and you can get the most out of your time at Glendale.
Me personally, I want to, and they're both in the community college level in a different state in Alabama. And we have the benefit here in California to have free, the GCC Promise. We have our bogs. We have a lot of benefits to give us free education. And that's something that I personally utilize to my advantage, And it's the fact that we have that I can dream as big as large as possible in order to achieve my goal. No matter what university I want to go to, whether it's HBCU, whether if it's a Cal State, whether if it's Pomona, we have the ability to go to any school we want to because we have this fortune and this blessing upon us. So that's just me personally, just to dream big. That's what I do, and that's what my goal is. Yeah,
kind of to add on to what he was saying, we also have some of the top, educational institutions in the world here in America that we all have access to. People are trying, fighting to get into this country just to take advantage of the educational opportunities we have. Because in America, I feel like in a lot of our, I tell people, no thief will take something from you that isn't of value. And one of the first things they took from African Americans was our history and our culture. And the more I study it, the more it changes the way I see myself. It changes the way I deal with other African American individuals. I'm teaching my mom about where we come from, and it really opened me up to challenge myself. Maybe that's why there aren't as many African Americans in engineers, which is not true. We have a very large history of making scientific contributions and in education. So challenge yourself. Learn your history and connect with other students that are like you.
Next question. Do you feel that Glendale Community College supports diversity or inclusion? Please consider your experiences inside and outside of the classroom.
I've seen the many programs we have at GCC, and I'm not sure what are the numbers statistically of diverse of students, but I know I see the scholars program we have here at GCC, and I don't see many African Americans, if there are any students in that program. Other programs could be, I think it's Alpha, Gamma, Sigma maybe, I'm not sure the name of it, but there are programs here that we should probably could we be more supportive of including these students? And I know that there are certain guidelines we must go by that, but me personally, I was not the ideal student when I first came to Glendale Community College. It wasn't until I got into the student government program that I was able to change my thinking, because I saw other students that changed me. They were doing the straight A's. They were studying way more than I was studying by any means, And that influenced me to say, okay, let me step up my game. Let me try to pursue this, because if they're doing it and they think the same way I do, why can't I do the same thing, And I think we just need to see more students be pushed towards programs. You can get into this program. Let's try. Let's help. We can work together on this, because that's the only way we're going to see this through. It's a community. It's a whole effort, not just us black students together. No, we need the help of the others to help us, in my opinion.
I think that Glendale does definitely have a diverse, campus. Or I feel like a lot of the students that come here come from different backgrounds, and I've made friends, from Russia, from India, from all over. And what I like about GCC is that they do offer programs that go over the history of their cultures. And I, have been learning that I was quite ignorant to Chinese history and to Indian history, but I took an art history course here, and I was blown away. So, like I, mentioned earlier, that learning African history changed the way I saw myself. Learning Chinese history or Indian history or Armenian history will change the way that I see them. So I think that Glendale does a good job of maintaining a diverse campus.
Well, to me, this college is the most diversified college I ever saw, because I've not only met, I think, someone from every part of the world here. And like I said, I took African American studies, and now I'm able to, some that can't really speak English that much, sometimes like, you come learn me a word from your culture, I'll learn you an American word. Or a lot of people will find me and say, Katrina, how you say this, in English? I like helping. Teaching other cultures about our culture. I do it every day. I do that to strangers. I just like talking to people. So my second college, but if anything, I love that college, don't get me wrong, but to put it out there, GCC.
And I would agree with everyone that's already spoken. I haven't experienced anything as an African American specifically yet at Glendale Community College where I have not felt included because of my race. I agree with what she was saying, just as far as Glendale being a community college that is diverse. And so it predominantly being a lot of Armenian students who are first generation and also understand what it feels like to be diverse. I think that that creates an environment where there is a level of unspoken understanding as far as being what quote unquote separate or non-traditional American looks like. So I would say yes to the question as far as being included and involved with the programs at Glendale Community College.
Thank you. We want to say thank you so much for answering our questions, and thank you for being present and vulnerable and really giving us a good idea of, or at least a glimpse of your experience here at Glendale Community College. We wanted to also open it up a bit, triggering or just something that you want clarification on. We have a couple minutes for that, and then if we do not get to your question, we will have another Q&A at the end, so we would hopefully get to your question then. So we'll do about 2 questions. Yeah, we actually have one more student who wanted to share his experience briefly. Okay, David's giving me the role. Okay, great. Okay.
Hello, I'll be brief. My name is Nathaniel Stevens. I've been coming to GCC since 2016. I entered as a music major. I was in about 4 bands. One of them were mine, and we recorded and had an album and whatnot. It was very fun. I thought music was for me, but it turned out not to be for me. Ever since middle school, I was pretty good at math, always stayed strong in math. I just thought music was for me, but it turns out it's not, so I decided to major in engineering, civil engineering specifically. And right now, I've just been working on that for about 2 years, hoping to transfer to a 4-year, and just keeping my head down, not looking at the clock. Keeping the, just keeping the grit mode on, and hopefully faith in God will take me all the way.
Thank you for sharing.
So I was just going to say, we have time for a couple of questions. Yeah. Also, if you wanted to ask questions anonymously, you can go onto Twitter if you have a Twitter account, and you could use hashtag #TakeItToTheStreets. And then if you put "take it to the streets," then we could broadcast the question, or someone will convey the question to us that way. If you want to candidly ask a question without outing yourself or whatever the case may be, you could just go ahead and do that.
So I've seen a couple hands shoot up. We have a question right here, and I believe you had a question as well. So I'll come to you.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I was about to say yeah. I don't use the mic. I literally take care of kids for a living.
We need it. We need it for the live stream. Yes.
Does he have to?
Well, oh goodness gracious. I'm not used to using the mic. Well, my question mainly is because I come from El Camino College, and I've noticed with our black population is at 13%. So it's a little more than you guys actually. But my question mainly is, do you notice your black population, are the black students actually communicating with other students here? Like, besides you guys, do you notice that the black population is actually communicating with more other cultures? Because with us, I've noticed a number of different...
All mixed. We don't all just be in one circle all the time. So.
Yeah, I think with the 3% population, you might be talking to yourself after a while. Don't want to talk to anybody.
I just wonder, my daughter got it for me, is because he's a king in my eyes, and I wanted to be his queen for today. But now I'm hot, so.
Actually going to be that way for a lot of students. I mean, if you think about it, if that's all you have, you naturally have somebody to relate to when you have another black student here with you, helping you out. I mean, it's not because we want to shun away from anybody, but it's that piece of just that release that you get. I can finally communicate and stress my problems to you because you understand where I come from. And I think that's a lot of people either take that wrong, and it's not, and other people do it to us too, but it goes both ways. It's not to hurt, it's just to release something that maybe we go through. That's how I take it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I have a lot of like non-African American friends, and it's cool. I look at it as an opportunity to teach them about things that they may not know about African culture. And you know, I do have black friends on campus, and it's nice to, you know, get some backup in an argument or something like that, or you know, to have them support me. But for the most part, I feel like other nationalities here have been pretty open-minded. So.
So my question is, I was looking at your student equity plan and didn't notice any targeted in-reach strategies for African American males, students of color. And so my question to the panel is, what type of in-reach activities have you experienced to help push you forward from the level from whether you're being a first year, second year, non-traditional, and so on and so forth?
Me being in the Black Scholars Program, I'm gonna be honest here, I was a little bit, I was upset about the program and how it didn't really tend for me to grow. There was never any chances for me to cooperate with each other, you know, through the simple of Black Scholars. I didn't get a chance to get in touch with a deeper connection with my counselors. And it's shocking because it's the one place that should be for me, but I didn't get the help I needed for Black Scholars. I think we can maybe we can all agree on that, but I don't know how their experiences are, but I didn't, me personally. I got a lot of my help from my organization, from ASGCC. That's why I was able to develop, and not through the Black Scholars Program. I don't know if y'all want to add on to it. But.
So what kind of resources would you guys like to see available for Black students on campus? Resources, organization. How can we come together to support your success?
At the college that I'm attending right now, they have almost like an organization of black engineers. And one thing I thought that was pretty cool is that they will take African American individuals that work at different companies, and then you'll go and you'll do like a mock interview with them. And that's how they can decide whether or not you get an internship or not. And they did that to remove the element of racial bias when applying for internships. I mean, I'm going through the process right now, and I have an interview tomorrow, and I'm a little bit nervous. So, because, you know, I'm reading reviews, and it's real, you know, like a lot of the reviews are saying that, you know, they're, you know, prejudiced or something against African Americans, and I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that that's not true. But if we could get like a program to, you know, I guess get black engineers or black scientists.
Okay, for me, it's with the books. You know, like just say for me, how I don't get financial aid, which is fine. And I have too many units, so I don't qualify for EOPS, that's fine too. But maybe some kind of help with our books, because if you take more than 2-3 classes, then books cost a lot. And sometimes, like, thank you to GCC, I was able to get a scholarship twice. I was like, I'm gonna pay for my books, you know? So maybe help us maybe with our books, you know?
Okay. And to answer his question, just as far as internal support, I think hiring 2 African-American counselors has been a huge support for African-American students, just as far as identifying with people that look like us. I know we have Dr. Troy, who was an amazing counselor on staff as well, who I personally was able to work with when I was a student here by fluke, which ended up being a huge blessing because of just his natural care for students and his line of work and his history. And then to answer your question, I think we've talked a little bit about just as far as the concept of the student as a whole. And when we answer questions, usually we answer it based on our own personal experience, or, you know, where we come from, or what would help us individually. And I come my interest is from a holistic perspective as far as dealing with the whole person, from the mind, the body, the spirit, financially, occupationally, educationally, intellectually. There's so many parts to us as people. And so I think that one of the resources that I would like to see at Glendale Community College would be more maybe college hour workshops that gear towards the specific whole person as an African American student, starting from the core of a person. So whether that's relationships, whether that's dealing with the individual mind of a person, and school, you deal with stress and anxiety and all of those things as a student, but underneath being a student, there is a person behind the education. And so I would like to see more outside support and maybe inside support with people that have experience dealing with specific areas within a person, so that when they leave Glendale Community College, they leave not only intellectually more brighter, but also more developed as a person, as a young adult, or even as an older adult, to go into the world and be a better whole person. So I'd like to see more of those options for us.
I have a question over here.
Yeah, I really agree with the workshop. If there was a place where we can all meet up and talk about our problems together, it will create a lot more community amongst the Black students here, because I've personally tried to communicate with other Black students and it has not gone very well. And I think it's because we don't know our problems very well. And so I really agree with the workshop idea. I think a lot of Black students are hurt on a very personal and individual level. And it takes people to recognize that. It takes professionals to handle that with care. And so I really agree with that.
When you say hurt, what do you mean?
I think I think we're disproportionately at a disadvantage in a lot of ways besides education. I think emotionally, I think mentally, I think spiritually, a lot of Black students are not aligned. And that's why I think that young lady over there is talking about that. Because, oh, okay. I should know that. I mean, being in a band and whatnot. But yeah, we are very social creatures, and we lose the meaning of Blackness. We lose the meaning of being an African American if we cannot connect with each other. There is no African American if we cannot connect and if we cannot build together.
That was very well said. Thank you for adding that. Just to kind of support your statement, I have noticed, being in the Black Scholars Program, that there is not a lot of energy or resources directed toward, number one, finding a leader for that program. There is no Black scholar leading Black scholars. And that's not to take away from the counselors that are there in the Student Equity Program, because studies, when Lakasha was there, my first semester, I felt like I could go to her and talk about just interpersonal problems that I had with other students, and it was very helpful, and it helped me to really succeed and motivate me. So my question, I guess, is to whether or not
Stand up. Alexandra Evans is the new adjunct counselor for our Black Scholars Program. And she will be starting in a spring semester. Alexandra is currently working with us in general academic counseling, and last year she was with us full-time working in DSPS. So we do now have a counselor there that will be there. I can't say full-time at this point in time, but she will be there part-time and looking to make that into more of a full-time type of position going forward into the future. But to answer your question, yes, we are moving in that direction.
Come back.
No, I just wanted to say, come back. Come on back. All the Black Scholars people, come on back. Starting spring 2019, come on back. We'll work it out.
I believe this will be our last question for now. Like I mentioned earlier, we will have another Q&A.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to know from the panel, do you feel GCC has equipped you as an African American to enter the world out there? Because I'm from LA and from that demographic down there, and it's quite different up here on this hill. So I want to know if you feel like you are ready to encounter some of the things that might be waiting for you just down the road.
I'll try and answer that. So I think that that's a task beyond just Glendale Community College. I don't think that it's Glendale Community College full responsibility. But I can say that, like we were speaking as far as providing workshops in Alexandria, on the whole being to go out into the world and to be, what you said, prepared. I wouldn't say it's something that can happen in 2 years, which is what a community as much prepared as possible within 2 years to go out into the world, if that answers the question. Slowly but surely, more opportunities being provided for students, and how will cause you to, like we were talking about, find the resources that are there if you're looking for them.
Well, I have to say, from a person from coming from over there, that I'm leading by example. It has helped me, it has changed me, and I am ready for the world.
Well, thank you so much for asking all of your questions. Once again, we're going to have a Q&A towards the end. So now we would like to transition to introducing Dr. Matt Lawrence.
That was a great student panel. Thank you to the student panel, to the audience. It's time to get to work. We're ready to get to work. And we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours. So thank you all. So now we're going to talk about best practices and success strategies for the achievement gap. I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Professor Matt Lawrence. This spring, he begins a new appointment as Long Beach City College's Coordinator of Student Equity. He has worked with the University of Southern California's Center for Urban Education. Over the past several years, he has implemented numerous strategies to close equity gaps in his classes, some of which he will share with us today. So now I present to you Dr. Matt Lawrence.
Hello, Glendale. This is my first time visiting your campus, and I was kind of blown away. Right out of the car, I was like, I didn't know you guys were up in the hill with the foggy clouds coming in, and it was just cool. And then I get down here and I see these facilities, and 3% black student population. But man, getting on the elevator with a couple of black women, seeing all these black and brown faces, it was like, wow, this seems seems different. It seems to focus on the racial dimension of student equity. As we heard earlier from Destiny, we've got all sorts of disproportionately impacted groups, disabled students, veterans sometimes. Gender comes into play in certain programs. We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm going to focus today primarily on issues of race. And I want to thank Robert Hill for inviting me down. I don't do a lot, and now I've just been appointed Student Equity Coordinator for the college. So I can't talk to you as much about our college-wide programs as much as I probably would be able to in a year. Mostly I'm going to talk to you about what I've been doing in my courses, going to focus in on course level equity. But thanks to Robert for inviting me. I've known Robert for probably close to 20 years. He used to be at Long Beach, and last time, well, second to last time I saw him in person, he was on a surfboard with me in Newport Beach. Picture that. The big guy on a big board. Yep, yeah, we're planning a trip. But we met up again. We've kind of stayed in touch here and there. And then we met up again before a USC conference a couple of months ago and had breakfast, and just we couldn't stop talking about student equity and the challenges facing our students, the challenges facing our instructors. And so he said, I just got to have you come out and talk. So this is actually the very first thing I could say I've done as student equity coordinator of the college. So mostly I'm going to talk to you as a philosophy professor. I've been at Long Beach City College, and hello way over there. I don't want to forget about you. I've been teaching philosophy for about 20 years now. It's getting used to this idea of being an old timer. I now have about 5 or 6 of my former students teaching or counseling at the college, so that's really exciting to see. I wanted to get a quick look. How many students do we have in the room? Raise your hand if you're a student. Probably a lot over there. All right. Loads of students. I'm not talking about you lifelong learners here. And let me see hands of faculty real quick. All right. Great. A lot of faculty, because a lot of what I have to say is geared toward faculty in the trenches trying to work on equity. And how about administrators? All right, we got a number of those, and members from the public. All right, and I'm sure I missed some of you, but welcome everybody. I've got a lot to talk about, probably too much to talk about. And the last thing I want to do is get all rushed, but let's go ahead and get underway. The talk that I've got for you today is brand new, finished at about 11:30 today. And then I email it over to David, and of course, always watching out for technology. I'm all prepared. I didn't realize I was a dinosaur. I tell David, all right, I got it all in a flash drive. He's like, we don't use flash drives anymore. So I email it, and of course there's some little translation problem. So you might see some lines that don't line up the way that I tried to perfect them. You might find a couple little glitches, but we'll deal with those. So here's an overview of what I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about systems. Might need to get that engineering student up here to work us through the systems. Going to talk about equity at the course level with a focus on racial inequities, and especially equity gaps for black students. Going to talk about reading and reacting to course level data, and we'll look at some equity-minded strategies. So, got Destiny on the keyboard. My remote control also works on flash drive. I got to upgrade. All right, systems. I just got some real basic points for you about systems. The results of a system is dictated by the design of a system. And some of these effects or results of a system, some of them are intended, some are unintentional side effects of the system. But if you want to change the result, you must change the design. We're talking about human systems, colleges. We got all sorts of human systems. The criminal justice system is another one. Going to take a quick look at the criminal justice system to get us started here. But if you want to change the result, you've got to change the design. And typically in human systems like our colleges, we're looking at the policies that we have. The norms are just standard routines, our culture. We're going to have to make some changes there, and that's what I've been struggling with. And the one thing I want to say right off is I'm not here to be the equity expert. I'm sorry if it got billed that way. I'm not your expert. I'm just somebody who's been struggling with equity for quite a while. I did my first equity-oriented project with the Center for Urban Education about about 12 years ago, but ever since grad school, I've been worrying about these sorts of issues. All right, Destiny. I want to start you off thinking about the system of criminal justice. Big issue. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Ta-Nehisi Coates, best known for his book Between the World and Me. Great book, I believe. He did a video on criminal justice, a little short thing, great for classroom use. It's about a 5-minute video on the criminal justice system. Let's go ahead, Destiny. Here are incarceration rates around the world, and sometimes we get a little depressed about America just failing at this or that. Well, when it comes to imprisonment, boy, we are number one. We are just dominating in terms of incarceration rates. And then when you look at Black America and Black American men, we are just off the charts. Let's go ahead. There was a line, as I was thinking about this presentation, it reminded me of a line that Quotes has in this video. He says, "I think our criminal justice system is working as intended." You might wonder, is he being sarcastic here? Is he being literal here? It's probably a bit of both. If you believe that prison is an effective means of dealing with the myriad social needs of the African American community, then it's pretty effective. If you believe that warehousing mass numbers of black men is a way to deal with problems such as drug addiction, unemployment, and see the hanging T there? That's the sort of thing I was warning you about. Homelessness, mental illness, illiteracy. We've got these problems in our society. And what are we doing about it? We are using mass incarceration as our way of dealing with it. Even though we've known for quite a while it's cheaper to send people to college than it is to hold them in jail, but we are choosing jail. We're choosing jail over rehab. I think about one of my former students who I've kept in touch with for about 15 years, has had mental issues and hence chemical issues to deal with that, and he has had the hardest time with the healthcare system being poor. All right, let's go one more. So here's another line from Coates. He says, "Are we okay with there being a 1 in 3 chance for every African American male born in this generation to be doing some sort of time in prison?" That is how ugly it's gotten. 1 in 3. Are we all right with that? Or do we have some sort of long-term commitment to justice? We can't be all right with that. Let's go one more. And we got Cornel West here chiming in from his foreword to the book, The New Jim Crow, a great book on mass incarceration. He says, "There's no doubt that if young white people were incarcerated at the same rate as young black people, the issue would be a national emergency." I'm sorry, but it's just not looked at the same in our society. It's gone ignored. Finally, we're starting to inch toward some changes in the criminal justice system. Let's go one more. Now here what I've got are, call this echoes of quotes, of Coates. This is not a direct quote. I'm going to put some words in his mouth. I think if he were here, he'd be right on. Let's transfer his line of thinking to higher ed. "I think our higher ed system is working as intended. If you believe that the traditional norms of institutions and professors are an effective means of dealing with the myriad educational needs of the African American community, then it's pretty effective. Pretty effective at maintaining the status quo. We find that they're underrepresented in the curriculum. They face stereotype threat, implicit bias, microaggressions, low sense of belonging." Now, it was great to see the students we saw today. A lot of college pride, a lot of success stories. And at Long Beach, we got a lot of those success stories too. But I don't know if that's the full picture. And the more we scratched at that, the more we started to see there are some underlying issues. Let's go ahead. So to echo Quotes once again, I could imagine him saying, "Are we okay with there being only a 1 in 3 chance for African Americans at our colleges to complete their degree or certificate? Are we all right with that? Or do we have some sort of long-term commitment to justice?" And that's how it shakes out. Just like we saw in mass incarceration. 1 in 3 black men spending some time in prison, which is just a disgusting statistic. Well, 1 in 3 are going to graduate. 1 in 3 are going to fulfill their dreams. Whether we're talking Glendale, whether we're talking Long Beach, it's about 1 in 3. Are we all right with that? We can't be. But we keep doing so much of the same things. What are we going to do? So this is the problem I've been struggling with for the past few years. Race inequality, racial wealth inequality. When I saw this, I was still doing this work all the time, blown away by what's going on. If you look at the median household wealth by race and ethnicity, this comes from Forbes. The median household wealth for white families has been, $160,000, $122,000, well over $100,000 median wealth. But when you look at black and brown families, it's about $1,500 total median wealth. You can't fix your roof with $1,500. Let's click one more. Median wealth for a single Latina with children is $0. Something's got to change. So much of this depends on education. Education is the gateway, and we are the gatekeepers. But I got to say, when we look at those numbers, I can't feel like we're succeeding. Since we're here celebrating Martin Luther King, thought I'd tie in Martin Luther King real quick. As we heard this morning, a great presentation. Those of you that saw the speakers this morning, they were just awesome. The Buddhist monks mentioned kind of a history of Martin Luther King's work. The last thing he worked on was the Poor People's Campaign. Unfortunately, his death cut that a bit short. A national call for a moral revival. We've got to do something about the wealth disparities in this country. He was working to get billions of dollars dedicated to a real war on poverty, more low-income housing, and so forth. But that campaign was cut short. So to return to that theme of systems, I created a little graphic of our system. We send students into the system. We've got students of all colors, gender, sexuality, a lot of diversity coming into our system. And our system is based on these policies, norms, practices, and structures. And some of them go out to graduate. But if we look at their system statewide, 52% are not completing their degree or certificate. 52% are falling into that field of broken dreams and failed aspirations. But if you look at the colors of the little indicators there coming out, certain colored balls coming out more than others. Certain colored balls graduating more than others. We've got issues with equity. Let's go one more. I pulled the data for Glendale and for Long Beach. Again, you can see this is off the Chancellor's Student Success Scorecard. African Americans at about 33% at Glendale, 30% Long Beach. If we compare these to white students, notice at Glendale, white students have about a 61% chance of success. So we got black students not completing their degrees at twice the rates. Are we okay with that? Same deal at Long Beach, 30% for African Americans, 49% white. Let's go one more. And that, folks, is within 6 years, of course, not the 2. So I think what we often have is a perpetuation of an antiquated design. College was created for a particular sort of student. For a long time, only certain sorts of students were allowed into our colleges. And that design keeps getting replicated because how do we teach? To a large extent, we teach the way we were taught to teach by our professors. We didn't get real teacher training. We do what our professors did, who did what their professors did. And college professors are typically students that system served well. I was served very well by that system. got right on through it, got a PhD, I was styling. Let's go to the next. Because I was one of those students that tended to feel, now I'm going to go over here what I call the 5 equity precepts. Now this is something that USC Center for Urban Education have come up with. They use these precepts. They don't call them the 5 precepts, but I thought, yeah, they deserve a name, so I'm going to go with that, the 5 precepts. If you're looking for a magic bullet for equity, sorry, there isn't one. But if you want something to really that's going to stick in your head, I would suggest these 5 precepts. I try and utilize these 5 precepts in everything I do to try and maintain that equity lens. Welcome, create a partnership, validate, represent and deconstruct, and demystify. I'll be talking about these more later, but real quick, these students like myself, we tended to feel welcome at college. Instructors didn't need to go out of their way to make me feel welcome. I knew I was supposed to be there. This is where people like me go and eventually get our faces on money. Students like this didn't need partnership from their instructors because they had been prepared for academic self-sufficiency their whole lives. Nor did they need a lot of validation since they were assured of their importance and talents from birth. There was no question about whether the curriculum represented their culture. It was our culture through and through, and we were taught that our culture is what made this country great. Our culture is what made the world great. And college culture and norms did not need to be demystified because we could rely on social networks. We had our parents with college degrees. We had our friends going to college. And so just the process of going to college, the process of financial aid was much more clearly spelled out for us. Let's go one more. So let me sort of segue into equity at the course level. And here's the good news. We can think of the whole institution as a system, but we can also think about our individual courses as a system. And the beauty is they tend to be a system where we have an incredible amount of control. It does vary from discipline to discipline. Some disciplines are a bit more standardized than others, but I got to tell you, in philosophy, I've got a lot of leeway. Our philosophy instructors do very different things in each class. We are designing our own system. But we got to not fall into the trap of doing things as they've always been done. Let's go one more. So, closing our course level equity gaps, a 12-step program. Here's our step 1. Admit you have a problem. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Lawrence, and I have a problem with student equity. You're like, we're supposed to get the guy who doesn't have problems with equity. No, I have problems with student equity. I am struggling with student equity, and I'm here to share my struggles. Good news is, the good news and the bad news. Good news for me, it's not just me. Bad news for you, it's probably you too. Let's go. Most likely every faculty member in this room has inequitable outcomes in their classroom. So what I would suggest is, if you're not doing this institutionally, this is, I think, step 1, get your course level equity data. The first time I received my course level student equity data broken out by race was about 2.5 years ago. And it was a wake-up call. I'd been working in equity for a while, and now it seems like, boy, I was dabbling around the edges. When I saw my data, I got scared. I needed to change. So let's take a look. Now one thing, I got this data, and here's the problem. Even at Long Beach, we got a lot of work to do here. Most faculty have never seen their particular course data, their personal data, broken out by race. Maybe they've seen department data, and they know, yeah, the department level looks bad, but that's probably not me. Look at your course level data, get your course level data to your people. But it's a pretty sensitive subject. I was doing a project with about 15 faculty, and we had our institutional researchers pull our course level data by race and ethnicity. It came to each of us in a sealed brown envelope. Nobody got to look at it but you. We're taking baby steps here. One day, we'll have open conversations about, boy, your equity data is looking better than my equity data. What can you teach me? But right now, it's a sensitive subject, and you gotta be careful about moving forward, and we're trying to figure out the best way to move forward. But I think it's huge. For me personally, it was huge. There's a lot of resistance to equity, to making change, and really there's the resistance to taking responsibility. I mean, there's two paths you can take. You can be a victim and say, it's got nothing to do with me. Equitable student success is outside of my control. It's all because of fill in the blank. Nothing. Student laziness. I can't help it. These students, they're lazy. They don't want to learn. All they want to do is play basketball. Society, you know, we live in there's systemic racism in the country, and that's affecting student performance, and it's totally true. How about K-12? Let's pass the buck to K-12. K-12 failed these poor kids, and now they come to me unprepared. What am I to do? It's easy to play the blame game, to play the victim, and there's some rewards to being a victim. If that's the case, I don't have to change because it's not me. And you know, and I get sympathy. Oh, yeah, it must be hard. You're a saint to be working with these students who don't want to learn, trying to get it into their thick skulls and so forth. I really hope when you see your data, or if you have already, that you take the responsible approach, that you say, I play an important causal role in the equitable success of my students. Now, I can't cure the world. There is a lot of systemic racism out there. A lot of it's not my fault, but can I really say there's nothing I can do? I can't make my class better. I can't close the gap. I think we got to say, nope, I can do more. What can I do? We got to figure this out. So let's look at the data. The first time I got my data again was about 2.5 years ago. And so they pulled my data from 2012 to 2015. And here's how it breaks down. This is not my data. This is philosophy program data. Notice our Asian students and our white students doing quite well. African American students not as well by any means. And Latino students also not as well. Now here's my personal course data. And one thing I want to say is we've got a really strong philosophy department. Our numbers look better than most of the college's numbers. Our overall success rate right now is about, for the campus is about 64%. So on the whole, philosophy was doing pretty well. Now here's my data. When I first saw my data, I thought, well, let's click one more time. I noticed, let's go back one. There we go. Well, the back one. We're going forward. There, yep. Okay, now let's go one more. Yeah. Now, taking a look at my data, it's a little embarrassing now, but at first I was not feeling too bad. I took a look at this and compared it to my department, and well, my Asian students are rocking it. And I guess I'm rocking it with my Asian students. We're at 86%. We're up 15 from the department norm. With my African American students, up 7%. With my Latino students, up 13%. Other unknown, 13%. White students, 17%, killing it with white students. I'm up in all racial groups. I was feeling pretty good, Not great. I'm still a little bothered, but pretty good overall. And then I had a conversation about getting my data with Estella Ben-Simone, who's the director of the Center for Urban Education over at USC. And she, in a subtle way, she's all, tell me about what's going on with your African American students. And so let's go one more, Destiny. I think a lot of this, what lens do you bring to your data? This was a learning curve for me. If I take a colorblind lens to my data, I could say, well, I had an extremely successful class. I was very, very well known for having extremely successful classes. I was way above average, and I was rocking it with all the races through a relativity lens. Relative to my colleagues, my success rates were above average for every racial group, so I could pat myself on the back for that. But let's go one more. But now if we take an equity and empowerment lens, the picture changes. When I use my white students as a target, and then I look at my other student groups, Asian students were down 3%, not bad. African American students down 31%. When that really sunk in with me, that hit me hard. I got some work to do. Also got some work to do with the Latino population, and white students were my highest performing group. All those others were disproportionately affected. Now, our equity committee, we're most specifically concerned with groups that are performing when there's at least an 18% equity gap. Sometimes there's margin for error in these things, but 31, you just can't ignore a 31% gap. Let's go ahead. So I started implementing equity-minded changes. I started messing with my policies, my norms, my routines, the classroom culture, and so forth, trying to get at these equity challenges. And luckily, I've been able to see some success here. I just recently received a new set of data. This was from 2017 and 2018, 2 years worth of data, and my black student success rate increased 20%, from 58% to 78%. Thanks. Leaving them with just a 3% gap from the white students. Hispanic students, a 7% gap. Asian students still rocking it at +5. All racial groups of significant sample sizes performed within a 3% of the overall success rate. Now, another issue that we're having, we've got a very small population of Pacific Islander students, and their sample size isn't big enough to show up on the data sets. They need at least 15 students to get, so I'd need a longer stretch of data for that. But we've got definite equity problems there, so trying to stay in tune to that. And I just received, put in another data call for this weekend, and I just received my data for last semester. And the exciting thing there is the equity gap between my black and white students was closed. Now, I don't want to get all full of myself, though. Again, and here I put in the sample sizes. In this semester, I had 171 students. A little bit of the problem. That's a lot of students to keep track of. I had 22 African American students, so it is a fairly small sample. Now the challenge is, can I keep this up? But I'm really excited to have closed that gap. I worked probably harder than I ever have in my 20 years this past semester trying to close that gap. So the equity gap between the black and white students was closed. Now, when we send information to the chancellor's office, though, that what they want to know is the equity gap between a student group and the highest performing group. So if we compare to the Asian student population who just killed it this semester, we would still see that. We'd see a 10% gap. Personally, though, I'm trying to look at ameliorating the effects of racism and other disadvantages. My biggest concern personally, I think what we really need to be caring about in terms of racial equity is how are students doing compared to the white group as sort of the target. But that's just me. Let's continue on. So now I want to take you through some of the changes that I've implemented. Now, I've got a lot of things, and this is one part. I know we've got one faculty member in our social science department who gets a little frustrated. She's been looking at data and what works for equity and saying, there's no data to support that this works or that works or so forth. Well, a lot of it, we need to be collecting more data. If something's working. Now, part of the trick is I've implemented a lot of things. What's making the difference? I've got some hunches about it, going to have to continue to explore, but I'm going to share some of the things that I think are helping in the situation. So first of all, I'd say perhaps the biggest thing is that I shifted my focus on what makes me successful. How do I judge myself? I used to judge myself on the course. Is the course doing well overall? And generally, I had the sense that, yeah, students love my courses, my retention rates are high, my courses are very successful. I felt successful. But now I've shifted. I really judge myself so much more on individual student success. Who did I lose this semester, and why did I lose them, and was there anything I could have done about it? And so often, I'm kicking myself. I should have intervened a week before, things like that. So I spend more time thinking about and worrying about individual students than ever before in my 20-year career. And if we get back to norms of the profession, and inheriting those from my instructor. I had a lot of great instructors, but I felt like it was pretty rare in my college experience that my instructor was thinking about me over the weekend. We just, it's so easy. We think about our courses. Course is going well. Yeah, but how's Jose doing? That's a different question. I pay closer attention to my roll books. I would suggest as we talk about data, your roll book is data, your grade book is data, stay on top of your data. I reach out to individual students far more than ever before. I probably sent out 5 times the emails to students last semester than any other semester. Let's go ahead. I abandoned colorblind ideology. Sometimes in discussion of race, this gets a little sticky, but I gotta say, I think that philosophy of color blindness, which so often gets attributed to Martin Luther King, I think King was talking about someday, maybe we'll reach that, where we don't have to worry about race and how it is affecting different people. Got a little quote from Robin DiAngelo in her book of White Fragility. If you don't see color, how will you see racism? And if you don't see color, how will you see educational inequity? If I didn't look at race of my students, then I could say, well, my classes are doing great overall. But when I break it out by race and see some of my students aren't doing nearly as well as others, that's a big deal. I've become convinced that adherence to the myth of color blindness causes one to miss the patterns that show that we are failing to meet the needs of all students. Let's go one more. Through a colorblind lens, we've got a great program at Long Beach. Hopefully you have something like it here. We've got a faculty mentorship program where we take people with limited teaching experience that maybe just got their master's or PhD. We take them on as interns and kind of train them in teaching. And I was interning, had my mentee. We did a first day of class, and boy, he came away just like, oh man, your class is awesome. That was great. And I'm like, yeah, that was a really good first day. And through the colorblind lens, I'm feeling that was a great class, such a rapid fire discussion. And then as we were heading up the stairs to my office doing this equity work, I started to think, wait a minute. That rapid fire discussion was really dominated by the white guys. I had a disproportionate number of white guys in that class than I usually do. And boy, they were really engaged. but it wasn't the overall sort of engagement. It wasn't the diverse engagement that I was looking for. So it made me rethink, and then I had to think, what can I do? I gotta intervene. I had to go from going from that was an awesome first day to, ooh, I gotta make some changes. How am I gonna bring out some of these other voices in the class? I became more concerned about implicit bias. I would argue that none of us are immune from race, gender, ableist, and other implicit biases. And a new thought occurred to me just this last semester. Somebody brought it up in equity. You know, we were talking about implicit bias, and one of our faculty members said, I really don't feel like I have racial bias in my teaching. If anything, it's opposite. I want my students of color to do so well. I'm pulling for them. But she mentioned, you know, I guess who I favor are the engaged students. You know, if somebody seems bored in your class, that's a turnoff to the instructor. I think that's a kind of a correlated bias that we have to worry about. The engaged versus the unengaged, the participating versus the non-participating. The participating students become the favorites. And they tend not to think, well, the other ones just aren't interested. A lot of that is our projection upon the students. They often have a lot going on and a lot getting in the way, and there's trust issues and so forth. So we've got to watch out for these correlated biases. Started implementing blind grading, especially. Well, again, none of us, including myself, we're not immune to racial biases. I was especially concerned. I think blind grading keeps me from these correlated biases. Sometimes if you feel, oh, that student's really trying hard, we might be a little more sympathetic when we read their work. If another student seems like they're not trying, we might be a little harder on their work. So we moved to blind grading, which became really controversial when we proposed that to all the faculty in our department. Some were insulted. You don't think I can grade fairly? You know, and they protested, and, you know, so only some members are implementing this. And then a constant examination of my implicit feelings and assumptions. Let's go one more. I wanted to bring you back to these 5 equity precepts. Again, I try and infuse these in everything that I do. What am I doing to make the students feel welcome? What am I doing to create a partnership, to validate their ability to do the work, to represent the diverse perspectives, and to deconstruct whiteness as the norm, and to demystify college norms and practices? Now, I want to try and wrap this up pretty quick here, so we leave some time for discussion. But let me just show you some of the things that that correlate with each of these ideas. In terms of welcoming students, done a lot of work on syllabus, redesigning the syllabus and holding syllabus workshops for others, really watching the language and intent of the syllabus, because again, so often our syllabus is an inherited document that we need to revise and rethink. I know every student's name. I start out with about 180 students, and I try and learn everyone's name within the first 2 weeks of class. And we spend time on that. And they learn each other's names in those first 2 weeks. And I feel like that's huge. I can't imagine going back to teaching a class where I don't know everyone's names. But so often people do it. I redesigned my classroom, which was also hard to implement because I share the classroom with other instructors, and every classroom is a bunch of rows of straight tables. It's a pain to get students to do group work when they've got to group up and so forth. Now they come in and they sit with other students. And I spend more time on icebreakers, on getting students comfortable with each other, comfortable with me. Team building exercises. We've changed the environment of the room from that sterile room to all sorts of equity-minded posters, many of which I've run some poster contests, and the students create their own posters, and we vote, and I've posted up a number of student works. Create a partnership. The 200% model of responsibility, I'll close with that. I mentioned emailing students more often than ever when I'm concerned about them, and also kind of giving them kudos when they're doing well. Being more flexible. The more I get to know my students of color, and you know, all our students, often they just have so much going on in their lives that I didn't have to go through as a student, and that some of my students don't have to go through. That sometimes you just got to be a little more flexible in your policies. Always ask about their academic career and career goals. Anytime they're at my office, I never let them leave without finding out why are they here, what are they doing, and how can I help them. We've shifted calling our office hours to student hours, and I think that just linguistic change is important. I now give an office tour, first week of school. Everybody marches through my office. They see my Viking vault. I've got granola bars and muscle milk there they can pick up at any time. And I do a student hour coupon. Let's go one more. Started using this coupon. They can pick up 2 bonus points for coming to see me in office hours. I give them a number of reasons why they might show up, because, again, this is part of that whole demystifying concept. What's an office hour? And typically many students think, well, that must be your time for you to do your work in your office. No, we're calling them student hours, and I'm going to take you there and offer you a granola bar and give you a list of all the reasons why you might come, give you extra credit for coming. Well, this past semester, 63 different students attended my office hours. That's over a third of my students, and some of them came time and time again. And that's one of the reasons why I worked harder this semester than ever before. 5 office hours a week is when I get shit done. But now, it's always students there, and it's awesome. But it's a lot of work. You got to roll up your sleeves, be prepared to do the work. Validate each student's ability to be successful. Teach growth mindset. Teach study skills. I'm offering more lower weight assignments rather than a few big assignments where grading is much easier, but then if they crash and burn on one, their future is in trouble. I've had some little anecdotes about Josh and Alexa and Donnell, but time is getting tight. Let me go ahead and skip ahead. Represent and deconstruct. I've tried to bring out more representative curriculum, and this is something that I've been sort of inching forward on for years and years. In my ethics class, I'm using Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, talking about mass incarceration. And boy, talk about engagement from your African American students. They are interested in this issue of mass incarceration. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Gloria Anzaldúa, Claude Steele and Stereotype Threat, John Fire Lame from the Lakota people. We heard a little about Thich Nhat Hanh this morning, who Martin Luther King put up for a Nobel Prize. I consider him to be my spiritual mentor. I used Thich Nhat Hanh, James Baldwin. But also, not just more representative curriculum, but I think what's been just as important is more relevant and empowering curriculum. I spent a lot of time in ethics covering economic inequality. And a number of the authors we're reading there are white. But it's an issue that people of color are very in tune with. It's relevant. How are we going to make our life better? In my intro classes, I emphasize how to live like a philosopher, have lots of things where the students go and do these experiments in their lives. I have them take a vow for 30 days where they make a vow. I'm going to do this or I'm going to quit doing that for the next 30 days to challenge themselves. And it's amazing how much students want to be challenged. A lot of folks say, they don't want to be challenged. No, you give them the right kind of challenge. They want to be challenged. They want to test themselves. I spend time teaching transfer, make sure I announce the important deadlines and events. We're constantly getting those. It's hard to keep up, but it's crucial to get that information. We talk about the UC Blue and Gold plan. A lot of students don't know about the financial opportunities available. We talk about average earnings of higher degrees, and I put my grading, I'm a dinosaur, I'm an old timer now. I was doing my grades the old-fashioned way, putting them on a piece of paper. I moved my grade book to Canvas, and I think that made a huge difference because students are constantly in touch with how they're doing in the class. All right, going to wrap up here. Final thoughts on responsibility. One more. I think the biggest shift in my teaching, as I explained earlier, pertains to how I view my responsibility as a professor. And one idea that I've kind of developed along this, and I teach to my students, is I tell them in the first week, I've got a 200% model of responsibility. You math faculty, close your ears, the math doesn't work. It's more the principle of the thing. I encourage my students to take 100% responsibility for their success. If they're not doing well in my class or any other class, I don't take responsibility for it. Don't blame the teacher. Don't blame your job. Don't blame your friends. Don't blame your parents. Your immediate response should be, I didn't do everything I need to do to succeed. Little quote from John Wooden, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So did they do every reading and homework assignment? Did they complete the study guide? Did they form a study group? Did they come to my student hours when they were confused? Did they come back before the exam? But here's the second part. Simultaneously, I tell them that I am going to take 100% responsibility for their success. When they are failing my class, I'm going to take it personally, and I'm going to say, what am I not, where did I go wrong? What can I do? What should I have done? I'll suppose I didn't do everything I could to prepare, to inspire, to motivate, and I'm going to look for ways to improve. One more. And that's it, what I'd like, trying to rush in here to save time to find out what's working for you guys and what else do you want to know. So, thank you.
Okay, my question mainly, since you're the equity coordinator now, I know you I guess you understand that new policy of AB 705, how that's applying to all students, but taking rid of reading placement tests and only made remedial classes. Do you feel as if that's really going to help with the equity gap, especially when they're applying guided pathways throughout all these campuses as well?
Yeah, as a philosophy instructor, where my time is really been spent, as I move into my equity coordinator position, I'm going to have to be looking a lot more at these college-wide initiatives, know a little bit about what's going on with AB 705, and I'd say I'm optimistic. I mean, we've got a real problem in basic skills. As we heard about, you got to pass the math. We get so many students that are hung up and they're not getting out. And so I think one of the most promising things, Nicole Glick in our English department is working on condensing our English courses so that students can get through these courses and get to the college level more quickly. And from my conversations with her, it sounds like she's having success with that. So at this point, I'm optimistic. We need to do something. Hopefully we can figure out the right design to make that work. Other questions?
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't teach here, but somewhere else, and I teach majority Latina students. And every semester I have at least 2 female students say that their high school counselors told them to get married, have children, forget about college. And that's really harmful psychologically. So I was wondering, in the class level equity mindedness, where do you see like healing? Because I think they need to do that in order to move on, because a lot of them won't participate in class. They don't raise their hand because they feel like they shouldn't even be there. They say they feel like they belong there or should be there, but I'm not totally buying that. I buy it half. And the other half, I think, is still from their previous experiences.
Good question. Yeah, I've seen similar patterns. Some Latinas are very outspoken, and I'm married to a Latina. I get the inside view, and she can be very outspoken in contexts where she feels really comfortable. But education was not one of those contexts. So how does that fit in the classroom? I think a lot of those welcoming strategies are important to really get the students to gel together. And the other thing is often some students, they're just not going to want to speak out to the whole class. That's too big a leap. And that's important. I do a lot of group work, have them sitting in their groups already, so that they can try out their ideas on their little group and get feedback and confidence from the group, and sometimes share with everyone, and sometimes not. But at least they're voicing their opinions, they're working through their thoughts in that small group. And then I think the other thing, when I think about changes I've made, I think changes that I made outside the classroom are at least as important as inside the classroom. So getting them to come to your student hours, and then the sorts of conversations you have then, and then that aspect of validate comes in, to let them know that you believe in them and that they can do this. And oftentimes it's raising their imagination. They sort of set low expectations for themselves because other things didn't seem like a possibility. And that resonates even with me as a white guy. I came from a blue-collar family. The idea of becoming a college professor was really hard to transition to. Nobody does that. It took me a long time. It was clear that philosophy was my love, but I never considered majoring in philosophy. Who does that? People who want to work at McDonald's or something. But eventually, I came to see somebody's getting paid to do that stuff. Why shouldn't it be me? But if I had been disempowered in various ways throughout my life, that decision would have been all the harder. So to convince students that, you know what, you can do more is a huge part of, I think, what you can use your student hours for.
I have a mic. Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. Like I said earlier, I'm a division chair of student services and have been an instructor for a long time. And I think we really have to decide what's really important to us as educators. Is it SLOs? Is it PLOs? Is it computer softwares? All that stuff, or is it really the human aspect of faculty? And one of the things that I got out of your presentation is that this was about you. Mm-hmm. Not so much of a computer program or all those other things that we're looking at, and all the mandates that we have to be responsible for from the chancellor's office, but just really good human beings. And I hope that's something that we can all take with us and challenge ourselves today going forward, that we can have any change that we want in our classroom. If we're coming from an instructor perspective, we can put that syllabus together. We can reach out to students if we want to do that. We can have student hours if we want to do that. Those are really all humanistic type of characteristics. And I hope that we can bring that to our classrooms, incorporate that type of philosophy in closing the achievement gaps, because I think that's what it really is about. And that's something that I got out of today's workshops from this morning to this afternoon. It's just about working together, working with our students, caring about our students, and not necessarily just looking at I want to make my course as difficult as possible so that I can weed students out. That really is not, I hope that's not what we're about, but just the opposite of how do we make sure that students pass? And what do I have to incorporate to make sure that our students are passing? So thank you, and I just wanted to add that comment.
Thanks. And just to piggyback on that, a big concern is, well, you're going to close those equity gaps. I know what you're going to do. You're just going to make your class easier. And you know, I feel like I've got my overall success rate, I believe, yeah, my overall success rate in that last semester was 81%, where our college is at 64. That's, you know, I'm happy about that. Still work to do, lost some good students, but I'm not making it easier. I mean, but I'm making changes. I think the more smaller weight assignments, rather than a couple of bigger crash and burn assignments, in some way makes it more doable for our students. Doesn't make it necessarily easier though. They're still being held to the same standards, but in a way that works better for them, as opposed to what works better for me. I'm doing more grading than ever. These homeworks where they're living like a philosopher, they're doing more writing than ever, and I'm doing more reading than ever. It's a lot of work. But it doesn't involve lowering the standards. We don't need to lower the standards. But I think for me, it's that commitment to not leaving anybody behind. Sometimes I feel like, you know, Arthur Schindler, you know, this watch, I could have sold this watch and saved another one. What if I sent out an email a week ago? What if I intervened in this way or that way? Eric?
So I wanted to address Hoover's question earlier also in terms of how to do healing, right? Like I teach over at Santa Monica College, I teach a counseling 20 class, and I'm also cognizant, you know, my class is of 35, so it's not nearly as significantly large as 180 students, but from my experience, even just teaching that counseling 20 class, I realized just going to talk to students, like taking the initiative after class to reach out to the students who are doing poorly, who might have, like me personally, like I use Canvas and I can monitor the students' grades. Like I'm always monitoring like how the grades ebb and flow, and I'll reach out to the students who, you know, start reaching the 60% earlier on. You know, like that's why we have initiatives like Early Alert. Like instead of relying on Early Alert, I'll go up to the student. I'll be like, hey, can I talk to you after class? Like I just want to see how you're doing, you know. And I'm tactful as my, you know, positionality as a student. I mean, as a professor, they might be like, oh, what are we talking about? But I'll really go up to them, and like there was a particular student I went up to, I talked to him. I'm just like, hey, like how are you doing? You know, like as faculty, just asking that question, like, how are you doing? Like, how are you transitioning? Like my class consists of primarily first year college students. A lot of them, like all my students were practically first year. So I'm just like, how are you transitioning? And one of my students, he told me, terrible, like my life is terrible. Like everything's falling apart. Like I just don't, like this is not for me. Like I'm meant to be a boxer. Like I just came here to take a couple classes. Like I can't fail this. Like everything's falling apart. Like, and I'm just like, well, you know, I started talking to him about boxing, just like, how are you adjusting with boxing? Like, you say you box a lot. He boxes 3 times a day, every day. I'm like, what if you adjust your boxing schedule? You know, just simple conversation. And then I realized he really emphasized boxing so much to where, as faculty, you know, we have to be cognizant of students are people. Like, they're people outside of here. So I was just like, he finds a lot of value in boxing. I'm like, do you value yourself outside of being a boxer? Like, do you find value in yourself? And he was just like, come on, man, don't be asking me these questions. And then it ended up leading to a deeper conversation about, like, have you ever thought about hurting yourself? And he's just like, doesn't everybody think about it? And I'm just like, no, not everyone thinks about it. And just, we ended up, you know, I'm only supposed to have office hours for like 30 minutes, you know, but I'm fortunate enough to have my office hour right after class and stay in my class. And I ended up talking to him to about 2 hours. And in just that 2 hours, you know, he started crying. He was getting frustrated. He's just like, why am I crying? Like, damn it. And just like, it's okay. And he just kept crying. But then after that conversation, you know, he had turned an assignment in late, and he was just like, can I still turn it in? I'm like, go ahead and turn in the assignment. Like, I'm gonna give you till midnight. And his whole trajectory changed. Like, he was getting a D in my class, and then he didn't miss a single assignment after that conversation. And it wasn't because we talked about how he can just do better in the class, but just how are you doing as a person? And it changed his whole trajectory. And I've told you, has anyone ever told you you have value? And he was just like, he just sat there. And I'm just like, you have value outside of just being a boxer. Like, you are valuable, period. And I value you. And I care about your success. Has anyone ever told you that? Like, has anyone ever told you that we care about your success as professors? Has anyone in your life ever told you we care about you? And he was just like, start crying again. I'm like, it's okay to cry, you know. But I was like, I value you as a person. And he was just like, all right. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And then he ended up getting a B in my class. So just taking that initiative to talk to students, seeing how they're doing, and really just making sure they're okay. That extra question can make all the difference. Thanks.
Any final question or comment?
Two questions. If you're working harder now, is there any fear of burnout for you? And also, should you be making more money if you're...
Yeah. No and yes. In terms of the burnout, I mean, I think the challenge of I got to do better is invigorating. I mean, you're constantly, I think the way to not get burned out is to be constantly reinventing the wheel and trying to figure out how can I do this better, keeping what works and abandoning what's not. And so I think that really keeps it fresh. I think I felt more invigorated, say, this last semester where I really got heavy with it. But I got to say, I did get a little tired toward the end of the semester. It is exhausting. And I guess rather than more pay, though I got no problem with more pay, fewer students would be nice. 180 students. If you're really going to worry about them as individuals, is a daunting task. If you're going to know everybody's name in the first 2 weeks, 180 students is a lot of names. And I don't remember, it's the funniest thing. I learned those names, and I'll forget the names of students when I see them in the hall from last semester. It's like my brain has to make more space for all these new names. Smaller class sizes or fewer classes. If we're really going to work this hard, we do need something.
All right, I agree. Good job. We unfortunately, we do have to come to a close. We've been here a long time. I want to say thank you to Dr. Matt Lawrence, not only a fantastic professor, but a phenomenal friend. Phenomenal friend. Love him very dearly. And he's very humble. He's been at this ever since I've known him. We've had great conversations, not too deep because he's pretty smart, and I just try to keep it simple. But he's been doing this a long time, and he's very dedicated to his craft. I want to say, first of all, thank you to everybody that came out, that participated in all-day activities. I think we have excellent people that really care if we continue to share with us today. Thank the students. You rock, okay? You're absolutely phenomenal. We're so proud of you. I hope we engage. This is the first conversation. This not a bad conversation. We gotta have more. Thank you. Have a beautiful day, and go out there and just spread a little bit of love, okay?